Hello, YouTube, Mr. Max here. Today, I will be asking the question, what if every single Pokemon region had a Steel-type gym leader? Now, this is the next video in my series where I'm giving every single region a new gym of every single type. I've already done Dark and Fairy in previous videos, so today I figured I would round out the last of the types were introduced post-Generation 1. So let's jump right into the criteria for how I develop these teams. First, the gym leader team and position will be chosen based on the steel types native to the region in question. Now, for the past couple of videos for this criteria here, I gave some kind of spiel about how I didn't want every single gym just to be the eighth gym leader with the four or five best, fairy or dark types, and then you could kind of work backwards to fill out the rest of the gyms. However, because steel types are just built like that, apparently. There's going to be a lot more eighth gym leader teams in this video than there were in the previous two videos. And something I've decided that from now on, if ever, if ever I legitimately feel like the eighth gym would be the most ideal placement for any given type in any given region, I will also be creating another team that would go earlier, just add some more variety and just keep me creative while doing this, even if I do fully believe that the eighth gym would be the most ideal. I'll be using the version of the region with the most options. Let's go for Kanto, Platinum for Sinnoh, etc. I will not be reusing aces of any canon, steel type gym leaders, or Elite Four members unless necessary. Now, all Pokemon from all other major trainers are fair game. So, for example, um, in Jodo, I will not be able to use Jasmine's Steelix on the Steel team I create there, but in Unova, um, Grimsley's Bisharp and Clay's Excadrill, those are fair game for their respective gyms I create. And lastly, the gym leader's overall strength will be based on the canon gym leaders of the region in question, if not slightly stronger. Um, for example, if I decide that the steel type gym leader should be the second gym of Generation 4, assume that the gym leader will be around the same strength as Gardenia, if not a little stronger. But to kind of go to the other extreme of that, for Generation 6, and honestly, 5 also, where every single gym leader was capped at only three Pokemon. I will be upping those numbers and upping the strength a little bit where I feel necessary. And that's something that'll make a little more sense as we go on. So starting out with Kanto, and obviously I did have to use the Let's Go games since in every other game that featured Kanto, either there were no steel types available or Magnemite were the only steel types available. So this team will be the fourth gym with an Alola Dugtrio, a Sandslash, and a Magneton as the ace. I didn't want another generation where it's every single Pokemon it's pretty much just a regional variant, but just by nature of this being the last one that didn't have um you know options available back in Generation 1. I did have to throw some Alolan variants in there, but like I said, this won't really be an issue going forward. But for right now, in the Let's Go games where these are, the steel types available, I think this would be a pretty solid team for the fourth gym leader. And just like with my previous videos, the little icon I use for the trainer sprite, it's just the trainer class from that generation that I feel just fits the vibe of the gym the best. I don't know, this super nerd character just feels like this team fits him the best. Um, yeah, I like this team a lot. However, considering that I am using Let's Go as a framework, this might be a little unhinged, and I completely understand that. I think this is probably what I consider the most canon, but if you were to use all of the resources available to you in the Let's Go games, considering just the way all the pieces came together, this team I'm about to show you just made so much sense to me. So I also created an eighth gym as well that is ran by one of the Rocket admins from Pokemon Go, this being the Team Go Rocket admin Arlo, and he has a Melmetal as his ace. Again, I just felt this just came together so perfectly. Arlo in Pokemon Go, if you ever fight him, he does have the chance of using Steel type Pokemon. In the Pokemon anime, Giovanni, who is the eighth gym leader, used Mewtwo against Gary in the anime. Um, it it just felt like everything just came together so perfectly for this eighth gym leader in Kanto to be a Team Go Rocket member who has a Melmetal who is exclusive to the Pokemon Go games. And you can technically use Melmetal in Let's Go if you transfer it over. So I like this team a lot. If in this alternate reality where Giovanni decides to pack up and go home after you beat him in Silphco, then Arlo takes over as the Steel Gym Leader. This just feels perfect to me. Again, I can understand people think this might be a little unhinged. I definitely think the other one is the more correct answer, but I like this one a little more. Moving over to Jodo, the generation that introduced the steel typing. And I personally really like the idea of having the generation that introduced this brand new typing, have that typing either be super early, like where it had the dark one be the second gem, or super late, like here, where I'm making it the eighth gem. And in this specific instance, I was honestly kind of forced to make it the eighth gem because outside of Magnemite, there's actually no other like early game steel types available. Skarmory is the only other one that's even a technically a single stage Pokemon because Fortress and Scizor and Steelix for that matter all evolved from Pokemon that are not steel type. And Magneton's the only Pokemon that has an evolutionary line that's steel the whole way through. So regardless, I do think this would be a very formidable team. It's a little, I don't know, unfortunate might not be the best word, but for me, I like it when you can have a team of at least four Pokemon and all of them have different typings. Here, Fortress and Scizor both have the steel bug typing. But really, that would actually make this gym even harder because Fortress and Scizor are only weak to fire. And then Skarmory isn't even weak to fighting or ground at all. It has other weaknesses, but as far as like the main things you're going to be throwing um into a steel team, Skarmory is either immune or not weak to two of them. So I think this overall makes for a very solid eighth gym. I just wish there were a way to have, given my rule set, to have it be four Pokemon of different unique typings. But like I said up front, because this is the eighth gym, I did also want to make one that was a little earlier. So I made one that's also the sixth gym. I do think, given the Pokemon available, the sixth gym is about right, honestly, for where it should exist in this generation. If I had the access to Steelix, again, given my rule set, that would definitely make it the eighth gem. But Fortress, Magneton, Skarmory, I think, especially given modern mechanics of them all having sturdy, would make for a very solid sixth gem in Johto. Moving over to Hoenn, um, I think the sixth gem is also a very good place for it in Hoenn, having a Metang, a Skarmory, a Mawile, and an Aggron. Like I just said before, I really like it when a gym leader can have every Pokemon have a bunch of unique typings. This is something I love about Winona's team in both Ruby Sapphire and Emerald. Her entire team has unique secondary typings, and I wanted to try to reflect that here. Um, any later in the game, I think Mawile would kind of feel a little lacking. Um, I feel like Aggron deserves to be seventh or even eighth, but I think it can work as the ace of a sixth gem. Um, especially if Metang and Mawile were both there, which Metang is no slouch, and Mawile has a good defensive typing, but they're just, not that powerful. They're not even really gonna be that big of a roadblock for you until to stop you from getting to the Aggron. And I really like the idea of having the Pokemaniac be the little icon here because Pokemaniac exclusively uses Pokemon that look like Aggron, that being Aggron and Rhyhorn. So I wanted to showcase him here since I made Aggron the ace here. But yeah, and any later, I think it would basically have to be the same team, if not add a Magneton. And I don't want to just use Magneton over and over again. So I like this being the sixth gym. Next up, we have Sinnoh. And yeah, something about the Sinnoh region just has a lot of incredibly powerful Pokemon. I wouldn't be surprised if over all 18, videos I make in the series, if not half, very close to half of them will have at least one eighth gem, from Sinnoh, just because there's so many incredible Pokemon in that generation. And I just feel like, I want to spotlight as many Pokemon from that region as possible. And this generation has four incredibly powerful, incredibly bulky steel types. And here, Bronzong, Magnezone, Probopass, Lucario all have different secondary typings. They all easily could be aces in their own right. Bronzong was the ace of Elution's team of Diamond and Pearl. Uh, I could easily see reusing Magnezone or Probopass in future videos of their secondary typings. Obviously, Lucario was Maylene's ace, so yeah, I think this is an incredible steel typing, no steel type gem. Like throw an Empoleon on there, and that's easy fodder for the Elite Four. Like that is absolutely something that I could easily see them. If I ever get around to doing a video where I essentially create new Elite Four members for every generation, Steel is a prime candidate for Generation 4, to the point where I think the Ace Trainer makes the most sense for this gen. But I did also create an earlier gem as well, that being the fourth gem with Bronzor, Wormadam Trash Form, and Probopass. I do think Probopass was just being as bulky as it is, but not really being able to deal out, a whole lot of damage. It has respectable attacking stats, but it's not like it's not really gonna one shot anything unless even if its quad is super effective, I don't really think it's gonna be that devastating on the offensive side. It'll just be really hard to take down because it's so bulky. And then, Wormadam, it's not the strongest, but it only has a one weakness, and then Bronzor also probably not being weak to ground because it's levitate. I think this can make for a pretty formidable fourth gem. Moving on to Unova, and I'm not breaking the streak here. We are making another eighth gem, and another eighth gem where they're all different secondary typings. We have Ferrothorn, Escavalier, Excadrill, and Klinklang. And this Klinklang is holding the Steel Gem. In this specific instance, I feel like it might be slightly awkward for Klinklang to be the ace because his steel move that he's probably going to be using is Gear Grind, which is a multi-hit attack. So the first instance of Gear Grind will get that boost, but the second one will not. So it won't be as devastating as if, for example, it is Excadrill using Iron Head or Ferrothorn using Gyro Ball. But you still don't want to be hit by a 75 base power steel move and then another 50 base power steel move. Like I said, it might be slightly awkward, but it's not, as big of a deal as it's not really that big of a deal, I think. I wanted to throw Bisharp on here as well, but I don't know. I just feel like this team just felt the best to me, and I felt like uh Bisharp would make this just a little too strong for a gym leader. That would definitely be going into Elite Four territory. But I did also create one that is the fifth gem with Clang, Durant, and Ferrothorn with the Steel Gem. And I honestly think I do kind of like this team a little better, kind of for the reasons that I already listed. I think Ferrothorn having that Steel Gem with it being as slow as it is, Gyro Ball is almost always already going to do max damage, plus the 1.5 boost from the Steel Gem will just be an absolutely devastating Gyro Ball. Plus, Durant with his hustle ability can hit pretty hard, and Clang is also no slouch, especially if they did want to give it an Everstone or sorry, Eviolite. Um, so yeah, I think I like this team a little better, but I did just want to shout out just all the incredible steel types that are in this generation. Moving over to Kalos, we are breaking the streak here because there are almost no steel types to work with. Literally, the only steel types native to Kalos are the Hoen Edge line and Klefki. And because of that, this basically had to be the first gym. They both have absolutely incredible defensive typings. These actually might be two of the best defensive typings in the entire franchise. However, it's still a first stage and a single stage that it's really a gimmick Pokemon. Like yeah, it can maybe mess you up with Thunder Waves and Swaggers and maybe maybe it could know foul play at that point, but I don't know. I don't really see this being even nearly as formidable as the first gym in Kalos. That Vivillon is deceptively strong for that point. But you know, given the criteria available, I think this is as good as this generation can do for steel types. However, with every video for Kalos, I do also want there to be one gym created for Kalos that has a mega evolution. So I want there to be either like a seventh or eighth gym. I think seventh is the absolute earliest. Uh, or I think everything seventh later should start having megas. You could even get away with the sixth gym. Um, so I created one that is the seventh gem with a double-aid Klefki, Steelix, just because I hadn't used Steelix yet, and then Mega Lucario. The only other Mega available was Aggron, but because this generation has such a strong tie to Lucario, I wanted to throw Lucario in there. Next up, we have Alola, and once again, there weren't a lot of steel types to work with. I had to do the first gym with Alolan Sandshrew, Alolan Diglett, and Togedemaru. I felt because Sandshrew and Diglett aren't that strong, they don't really have that great typings. I think this first gym could get away with three. I'm not against the first gym having three. I think two is a good sweet spot, especially if they can both, hold their weight. Or at least, the first one can hold you over just long enough for the second one to like really be devastating. But I think three, especially if they are as weak as they are, all on Sandshrew and all on Diglett, I think this works as a first gem in Alola. Next up, we have Galar. And there were three different steel types that have Gigantamax formed in this game. And I was kind of going back and forth about which one I wanted to actually be the ace because, like in theory, Duraludon makes the most sense because it was already the eighth gym leader's ace in Galar. It is a steel type. It has a pretty solid Gigantamax form. However, I felt like Copper Raja just feels more representative of the steel typing of this gen. Um, and yeah, I just feel like this team, Berserker, Duraludon, Corviknight, Copper Raja, Gigantamax form, just overall makes the most sense. Um, again, in my head, like I don't love Duraludon being not the ace because it was the ace of this gen already, but I think essentially having Corviknight as the secondary ace and Duraludon, being, third or even tied with Berserker, I think it works out overall. I think it still is able to highlight Copperajah as the true ace because it has that Gigantamax form. While Duraludon, it is still very strong in its own right. But I did also create another team with Berserker, Stunfisk, and Gigantamax Corviknight as the third gym. In Sword and Shield, by the time you get to the third gym, they're already using Gigantamax forms. So yeah, I wanted to highlight Gigantamax Corviknight as well. So now throughout, the canon games and these lists, these teams I created here, all three of the ones that I wanted to talk about did end up having Gigantamax forms. And lastly, we have Paldea. And just like with the other videos, I'm going to be essentially creating three different teams to kind of utilize the three different ways that Terra typing can be utilized. The first one being a steel type that tears into a steel type to make its steel moves even stronger. A steel type that tears into a different typing, whether making either offensively or defensively, just helps overall. And then the last team, one that takes a Pokemon that is not steel, but ideally looks like a steel type and makes it a steel type. So for the first one, I made it the fourth gym, being an Orthworm, a Tinkatuff, and Revavroom that tears into a Steel type. I just feel like Revavroom is a very good Pokemon, especially if it is able to set up with a shift gear. It could just be absolutely devastating with Iron Heads or any other physical moves that it uses. One that is a third gym with Vavroom, still Tinkatuff, then Orthworm that tears into an electric type. And this is amazing because this is very similar to Iono's Miss Magius. That's actually the other third gem in base Scarlet and Violet. Because with its levitate ability, it tearing into a electric type means that it functionally has no weaknesses. Same thing here, Orthworm with its Earth Eater ability is also immune to ground, meaning that if it tears into an electric type, it has no weaknesses. So, yeah, even though Varoom and Tinkatuff, they're not the strongest Pokemon, I think for the third gym, having this Orthworm, especially if it's able to set up with Coil and absolutely, do absolutely devastating damage with Body Press and Heavy Slam, I think this will be a very formidable third gym. But lastly, we have Orthworm, there's Bisharp, Revavroom, and Phalanx that tears into a Steel type. It still, to this day, boggles my mind that Phalanx is not a Steel type. For the longest time, it took me, I would say almost a year, if not longer, of playing Sword and Shield, playing competitively, as much as I did, to drill into my head that Phalanx is not weak to fire because in my head, like, oh, that is either a bug type or a steel type. It is neither, it is somehow pure fighting. Even though just looking at it, I feel it just makes so much sense for that to be a steel type, but it is not. So now, just like with Luxray from the Dark video, I am officially saying, yes, you can now be a steel type. So yeah, I think this team overall makes for a pretty solid seventh gym. And I like Bisharp here because it does evolve into King Gambit, who is a Gen 9 Pokemon. But I didn't want King Gambit to be the actually be on the team just because I felt that might be a little too much for what I believe would make for the seventh gem. Especially since, like I did in the Dark video, I essentially made it so that King Gambit were the ace in order to better utilize its ability, Supreme Overlord. Whereas here, if it's not the ace, it doesn't really make sense for it to even be on the team. So I think having Bisharp here still kind of represents the fact that it still evolves into a Gen 9 Pokemon. Yeah, I like this team a lot as well. So, thank you so much for watching. Please let me down below any and all thoughts you have about any of these teams I created here. Are there any Pokemon you feel I left out? Any Pokemon that you felt should have been the ace that it didn't make the ace? Any positions that I made that you think should be either weaker or stronger? Yeah, please let me know all that down below. I would love to continue this series, keep improving this series. Like I said, I hope to make 18 of these videos, so please let me know all of your thoughts down below. And with that, we will see you all next time.